Samantha Hayes never expected a single phone call to change everything. Sitting in her hotel room in Seattle, preparing for an important client meeting, she barely glanced at her phone until she saw the name Gloria, her stepmother. The moment she answered, her world tilted. "You think you deserve that money? The trust fund belongs to Brooke now. She's better than you'll ever be." Gloria's voice was laced with smug satisfaction, expecting a reaction, but Samantha had learned long ago never to show weakness. She took a steady breath, gripping the edge of her desk. "Thanks for letting me know," she replied evenly. A pause. Samantha could almost hear Gloria's disappointment. She had expected anger, pleading, anything but this calm detachment. Brooke, Samantha's stepsister, had always been the favored one. Gloria had spent years pushing Samantha aside, making her feel like an outsider in her own family. But what Gloria didn't know was that Samantha had been preparing for this moment. 6 months ago, Mr. Whitman, her late mother's lawyer, had warned her of suspicious inquiries about her trust fund. Together, they had secured the account, making unauthorized access impossible, and fully documented every attempt Gloria had made to steal it. As Samantha ended the call, she wasn't shaken. She was ready. Gloria had just played her final card, and Samantha held all the evidence to turn the tables. Now it was time to go home and end this once and for all. Samantha Hayes grew up believing in hard work and resilience, values instilled in her by her mother, Margaret, a self-made real estate mogul who built her empire from the ground up. Margaret was a force of nature, a woman who refused to be underestimated, and she wanted the same strength for her daughter. But when cancer took her life when Samantha was just 16, everything changed. Within 2 years, her father, Richard, remarried Gloria, a woman whose warmth never quite felt genuine. Along with her came Brooke, Gloria's daughter from a previous marriage. Samantha tried to adjust, but it soon became clear that in this new family dynamic, she was the outsider. At first, Samantha hoped to keep a connection with her father, but Gloria had other plans. Slowly, she manipulated Richard, shifting his attention toward Brooke, who was 7 years younger than Samantha and had a natural talent for playing the victim. Every small accomplishment Brooke achieved was celebrated, while Samantha's hard-earned academic success went ignored. When Samantha earned a full scholarship to a top university, Richard missed the award ceremony because Brooke had a stressful exam. It was a pattern that repeated itself for years. The real shift came when Margaret's will was read. She had left Samantha a trust fund, not a fortune, but enough to give her financial security and a chance to build something for herself, just as her mother had. Gloria's expression had been unreadable at the time, but Samantha sensed the tension. Over the years, Gloria subtly suggested that Samantha should share the fund with Brooke, insisting that Margaret would have wanted fairness, but Samantha knew better. Her mother had intended this money for her future, not to subsidize Brooke's privileged lifestyle. Despite the constant emotional manipulation, Samantha stayed focused. She excelled in school, worked part-time jobs, and eventually landed a position as an investment analyst in a competitive firm. The trust fund remained untouched, not because she didn't need it, but because she refused to give Gloria any excuse to interfere. Gloria and Brooke continued to play their roles perfectly. Gloria, the devoted wife and mother, and Brooke, the struggling but deserving daughter. Meanwhile, Richard buried himself in work, oblivious to the favoritism playing out under his roof. It wasn't until 6 months ago that Samantha realized Gloria had been playing the long game. Mr. Whitman, her mother's old lawyer, had called with a warning. Someone had been making inquiries about her trust fund. Gloria, it seemed, was getting impatient. But what she didn't anticipate was that Samantha was her mother's daughter. Cautious, strategic, and always one step ahead. With Mr. Whitman's help, she locked the account with additional legal protections. Every attempted access would now be logged and traced, setting a trap that Gloria wouldn't see coming. Now, with Gloria's smug phone call still fresh in her mind, Samantha knew the time had come. Gloria believed she had won, but in reality, she had just sealed her own downfall. Samantha had always known Gloria would try something, but she never expected her to be this reckless. 6 months ago, Mr. Whitman had called with a warning. Someone, undoubtedly Gloria, had been making unauthorized inquiries about the trust fund her mother had left behind. Samantha wasn't surprised. Over the years, she had endured subtle guilt trips, backhanded remarks about how Brooke deserved a fair shot, and even direct suggestions that she should do the right thing by sharing the inheritance. But this time, Gloria wasn't just hinting, she was making a move. Samantha had immediately taken action, meeting with Mr. Whitman to reinforce the security measures around the trust. They put in new legal protections that would make it impossible for anyone, even her father, to access the funds without her explicit consent. More importantly, they ensured every attempted breach would be documented. Emails, phone calls, forged signatures, everything would leave a digital footprint that Gloria couldn't erase. The moment Gloria's smug voice confirmed what Samantha already suspected, that she had transferred the money to Brooke, Samantha knew the trap had worked. Gloria had been so confident in her scheme that she never stopped to consider that Samantha might be ahead of her. The bank's security system had flagged multiple fraudulent attempts, and now there was an undeniable trail of evidence pointing straight to Gloria. Samantha closed her eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle. This wasn't just about money. It was about her mother's legacy, about years of manipulation, about Gloria's relentless attempts to erase her place in the family. But now, Gloria had overplayed her hand, and Samantha was ready to turn the tables. She reached for her phone, dialing Mr. Whitman's number. He picked up after 2 rings. "She finally did it," Samantha said, her voice steady. "I saw the alerts this morning," Mr. Whitman replied. "We have everything we need. The fraud department is already involved." Samantha exhaled slowly, feeling the first real sense of control in years. "Good," she said. "It's time to put an end to this." With that, she booked an early flight home. Gloria thought she had stolen the trust fund, but in reality, she had just walked into a legal disaster of her own making, and Samantha was about to make sure she faced the consequences. The moment Samantha stepped into her childhood home in San Francisco, she could feel the tension shift. Her father, Richard, sat on the couch, confused by her sudden arrival. Gloria and Brooke stood nearby, their faces a mix of surprise and forced confidence. They weren't expecting her, at least not like this. "Samantha, you're home early," Richard said, standing up. "Yes, Dad." "I needed to speak with you about something important," Samantha replied, keeping her voice calm. She set her bag down, pulling out a thick file of documents. Gloria's lips curled into a smirk. "If this is about the trust fund, there's no point, dear. It's already been transferred to Brooke. She needs it more than you do." Brooke folded her arms, trying to look defiant. "It's only fair, Sam. You've always had more than me." Samantha ignored them both and turned to her father. "Dad, do you know what actually happened?" she asked, handing him the file from Mr. Whitman. Richard hesitated before flipping through the pages. His eyes moved quickly, scanning the documented fraud attempts, the forged emails, the flagged transactions from the bank's security system, all leading back to Gloria. As he read, his face paled. "Gloria," he said, his voice unsteady. "What is this?" Gloria's smug expression finally cracked. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "She's twisting things around." "No, I'm not," Samantha cut her off, her voice turning sharp. "Every single attempt you made to steal that money has been traced and recorded. The bank was alerted months ago. Mr. Whitman put extra protections in place because we knew you'd try this." Gloria's face turned red. "You set me up." "No," Samantha countered. "I protected myself, just like my mother taught me." Richard's hands shook as he gripped the papers, his face clouded with disbelief. "Gloria, you forged my signature?" Gloria opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. The silence stretched, suffocating the room. Brooke, suddenly less sure of herself, tried again. "Mom was just trying to even things out, Sam. You've always had—" "I worked for everything I have," Samantha interrupted. "I built my career. I never touched that trust fund because I wanted to succeed on my own. Mom left it for me because she knew I'd use it wisely. You think I had it easy? I put myself through college while you were getting luxury vacations and designer clothes." Brooke's face flushed, but she had no response. Samantha turned back to Richard, her voice softening. Dad, I know you didn't see it before, but now you do. Gloria never cared about me. She only cared about what she could take from me. Richard rubbed his forehead, looking years older in that moment. He turned to Gloria, his jaw tight. Get out. Gloria's eyes widened. What? Pack your things and leave, he said, his voice shaking but firm. You lied to me for years. You stole from my daughter. You forged my signature. Won't ignore this. Brooke's voice rose in panic. Dad, you can't just throw us out. Richard looked at her, sadness in his eyes. This was your mother's doing, Brooke, and you went along with it. Gloria grabbed Brooke's arm, her face twisted in rage. Fine, she spat at Samantha. Enjoy your precious money, but don't think for a second you won. Samantha watched them go, her heartbeat steady. Gloria had spent years trying to tear her down. Now, she was the one walking away in disgrace. As the door slammed shut, Richard let out a shaky breath and turned to Samantha. His eyes held guilt, regret, and something else. Understanding? I didn't know, he whispered. I know, Samantha said. But now you do. The house was silent after Gloria and Brooke left, but the weight of their actions still lingered. Richard sat heavily in his chair, staring at the evidence Samantha had given him. His hands trembled as he flipped through the documents again, as if hoping the words on the page would change. But they wouldn't. Gloria had spent years manipulating him, and now the truth was undeniable. I failed you, he finally said, his voice hoarse. Samantha exhaled slowly. She had waited years to hear those words. You didn't want to see it, Dad. But now you do. That's what matters. The fallout was swift. Mr. Whitman had already submitted the fraud report to the bank and the authorities. Within days, Gloria was served with charges for attempted financial fraud and forgery. Since she had illegally tried to access funds she had no right to, the legal case against her was solid. Brooke, though not directly involved in the fraud, tried to distance herself, insisting she had no idea what her mother had been doing. Samantha wasn't sure she believed that, but at this point, she didn't care. Richard, still reeling from the betrayal, filed for divorce within a week. The process was messy. Gloria fought to hold on to whatever she could, but with the fraud charges hanging over her, her position was weak. Richard's lawyers uncovered years of small, unauthorized withdrawals from his accounts. Nothing major at first, but over time, the amount added up to hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned away under his nose. Meanwhile, Brooke pleaded with Samantha for a second chance, sending emails insisting that she had been just as much a victim of Gloria's manipulation. But Samantha wasn't ready to forgive. You stood by and let it happen, she wrote in response, even when you knew it was wrong. Still, Samantha didn't seek revenge. She wasn't interested in punishing Brooke. She just wanted to move forward. As the legal process unfolded, Samantha met with Mr. Whitman one last time. Your mother would be proud of you, he told her, sliding a final stack of legal documents across the table. She always knew you'd be strong enough to protect what she left for you. Samantha nodded, finally feeling at peace. Gloria had lost everything. Her reputation, her marriage, and her ability to manipulate those around her. Justice had been served, not just in the courtroom, but in the truth finally coming to light. And for the first time in years, Samantha felt free. With Gloria and Brooke out of their lives, Samantha and her father slowly began to rebuild their relationship. The first few weeks were awkward, filled with quiet conversations and lingering guilt in Richard's eyes. But Samantha didn't dwell on the past. She had spent too many years looking back. Now, it was time to move forward. Instead of using the trust fund for comfort, she decided to honor her mother's legacy in the best way possible, by launching her own real estate investment firm, just as Margaret had done decades ago. With her experience in corporate finance and investments, she had the knowledge, but now she had the capital too. Setting up the firm was both exhilarating and terrifying. Samantha poured herself into the business, working tirelessly to build something meaningful. She wasn't just investing in properties, she was investing in people, communities, and opportunities for others who, like her mother once had, needed a chance to succeed. Richard, seeing his daughter's determination, offered to help in any way he could. Though retired, he had years of experience in corporate leadership and financial management. At first, Samantha hesitated. She was still learning how to trust him again. But slowly, she allowed him to become part of her world again. They started having lunch together every week, talking not just about business, but about memories of her mother, things Richard had been too lost in grief to share before. "You remind me of her," he said one afternoon as they sat in her office, sipping coffee. "She was always thinking 10 steps ahead, just like you." Samantha smiled at that. For years, she had worried that Richard would never see her the way he had once seen Brooke, but now there was no one manipulating his perspective. He saw her for who she was, not just as his daughter, but as a capable, independent woman who had built something of her own. Meanwhile, Gloria's downfall continued. The fraud charges ensured that she couldn't access Richard's assets, and with her social reputation in shambles, she left California for good, moving in with a distant relative on the East Coast. Brooke, who had once thrived under Gloria's favoritism, was forced to stand on her own. She took a job as a marketing assistant, no longer enjoying the luxuries she once took for granted. Samantha heard from her now and then, small half-hearted attempts at reconnecting, but she had moved on. She had no interest in reliving the past. Instead, she focused on the future. Her company flourished, growing faster than she had imagined. She hired a small team, including Sarah, a bright analyst who reminded her of her mother, driven, ambitious, and determined to prove herself. One afternoon, as Samantha looked over the bustling office she had built, she reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a worn letter from her mother, the one she had written just weeks before passing away. "You are stronger than they give you credit for. Trust yourself." "I do." Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. Margaret had known all along that this day would come, and now Samantha was ready for whatever came next. 5 years later, Samantha stood in her office, gazing out at the San Francisco skyline. The city felt different now, not because it had changed, but because she had. The woman who once lived in fear of being sidelined by her stepmother was gone. In her place stood a business owner, a leader, a woman who had fought for her future and won. Her company had expanded, now managing real estate investments in 3 major cities. It wasn't just about financial success, it was about fulfilling her mother's vision, proving that Margaret's legacy wasn't stolen or forgotten, but carried forward in a way she would have been proud of. Richard had fully retired, but he still visited her office every week. Their lunches had become a tradition, a quiet acknowledgement of the years lost to Gloria's manipulation and the bond they were slowly rebuilding. He had even begun mentoring some of her employees, offering wisdom from his years in finance. Samantha still thought of Brooke occasionally. They had drifted apart, their lives moving in completely different directions. Brooke had tried reaching out once or twice, but Samantha never looked back. She had no room for people who only showed up after the damage was done. That afternoon, she visited her mother's grave, placing fresh flowers by the headstone. She pulled out the letter Margaret had written her all those years ago, reading the familiar words one more time. "You are stronger than they give you credit for. Trust yourself." I did. For the first time in years, Samantha truly believed it. She wasn't just surviving, she was thriving. As she stood there, the wind rustling around her, she smiled. Her mother had been right all along. The story of Samantha Hayes teaches a powerful lesson about resilience, preparation, and self-worth. Despite years of manipulation, she refused to be a victim, proving that strength isn't just about standing firm, it's about being prepared for the inevitable. Her ability to anticipate betrayal and take proactive steps ensured that justice prevailed. More importantly, she learned that true success isn't about wealth, but about honoring one's legacy and value. In the end, Samantha didn't just reclaim what was hers, she built something greater, proving that no one can take away what you rightfully earn if you stand up for yourself.